What's going on, cool bettors? Pat Gregoire, Jake Bollermoss, and Chris Abbott back with the Coolbet Canada Podcast. And yes, we said Chris Abbott would be down in Vegas. He's not by a pool because you said what? It's minus one or
literally,
one?
It's freezing. It's freezing, legit, like hovering around zero. Yes, Celsius, not Fahrenheit, but still, it's frigid.
That is wild. I mean, it's still better than what we're experiencing here in Ontario right now. So I'd certainly take it. You haven't seen the Metallica concert yet, but you were at a Chicago show last night, I think you were saying?
Yeah, we saw the classic band Chicago, man. They played the hits. It was good, man. They played for, over 2 hours. And I don't know if people out there, like when you see bands that incorporate the horns, right? The trumpet, the saxophone, God, what else did they have there? The trombone. I think there was a French horn. Like they had everything. These three guys killed it. But any band that uses those instruments and you see it live, and it was like in a legit theater environment. So like it was built, the room was built for sound. It was really cool. I posted a couple of videos. I tried to go live a couple of times, but didn't really work out. Not that I have this wild Instagram following anyway, but I think Jake tuned in for 3 seconds, or maybe accidentally.
I jumped on and I'm like, oh, it's pretty late. Chris is going to be like, what is this guy doing? Like, he's got
I actually thought that. I'm like, man, it's like 1 o'clock.
And I was like, damn it. I was like, it's
late. But no, so I mean, it is cold here. I had to turn the heat on. I think I was just as shocked as the heating system was. Like, what the hell? We've never been used. What's going on here? But how about this chair? So I got to try and find some way to get this back to my place in Toronto. It's like this crushed, like velour, like smoking chair. I feel like Hugh Hefner a little bit. It's anyway, I've been doing a couple of podcasts and meetings in this today, and I kind of like it. It's pretty comfortable.
That's awesome. Coolbet Chris, the king of Vegas in his throne. That's awesome. Yeah, it was the first thing I noticed when you logged on. I was like, that's quite the throne you've got there. But yeah,
but, I should break the illusion. I'm legit sitting at like a makeup table, like is here like with the mirror and the lights going around it. There's no desk in the room I have, and it had one of those little shitty makeup chairs. Like, so I literally dragged this across so yeah, break the illusion. And but no, it's a cool little spot. I'm staying at the Cromwell. It's a boutique place owned by Caesars. Yeah, it's good, man. It's really, really good. So yeah, I mean, I've been. It's ridiculous the amount of time I spend in Vegas. Like, it's too much. Like, I feel like a local. Like, I just stroll around now. It's not exciting. It's like, okay, I'm here. But the hotel rooms are free. So, like, it's just the flight. Why wouldn't I? And, yeah, get to see Metallica and then the Avs and Golden Knights. So, big weekend coming up.
Absolutely. No doubt about that. Avs Golden Knights, that will be an electric game. Two teams that I think from a betting perspective would be interested to see what the odds are. It won't be some of the crazy odds, though, that we have seen as of late. Chris, you mentioned it. The odds for some of these favorites in some of these hockey games look more like curling odds or, heavy favorites in baseball back when you said when the Astros were cheating and just killing everyone. Have you ever seen this before? Because this is unheard of.
Frequently in the NHL, we're seeing minus 400 and above. I think minus 300 in the NHL is an absolutely massive line. So, yeah, what's the game tonight? It's Columbus, and my mind is blanking. Who are they playing? Columbus is playing Florida tonight. Sorry, guys. There's only one way to bet this. You bet the underdog puck line and a little sprinkle on the money line. It's crazy. I mean, I did it in Montreal the other night, and the Leafs went in. They were almost a minus 400 favorite. If the favorite wins, there's no value on it. If you play the puck line, you got to lay 2 goals. And it's like, man, I'm not interested in this. So, Justin Bourne, responded. We had a little thread going. He said, middle of the hockey season, nobody should be more than 60% to win a game. Yes, there's a big mismatch in rosters and stuff here, but guys, the NHL is close. Like, there's a reason that puck lines are always 1.5. Like, it's not a game where you usually see like 7-0 or 6-1. Like, that's rare in the NHL. It's somebody said once upon a time, it's a 3-2 league, right? So, Columbus knows they're an underdog. They know they have to play a certain way to stay in the game. It's also a great spot for, if you're that big of a favorite, it's a great spot to have a letdown. I mean, Florida's been rolling. It's hard to bet against Florida or Calgary right now. But from a pure just like the chances of this happening, I think you got to bet the underdogs in these games, and it's happening more frequently. And I had this conversation with some people a few weeks ago, and we've seen the explosion of sports betting. We'll talk about that with Joe Osborne a little bit later on. But gambling used to be kind of reserved for the people who were smart about it. And now everybody's betting, whether they're smart about it or not. And people love to bet favorites. And that's why curling betting in its infancy, people just hammer the favorite. It didn't matter the price. And I think that's creeping into the NHL now, especially with, the explosion we're seeing in Canada. I think people are just betting the favorites. They're the better team. I'm going to bet on them. And as money comes in, the line has to move. So that's how, we always talk about this magical thing called value. That's when the value is created on the underdog.
Yeah. And just even looking, like you said, obviously the money line is ridiculous, but Columbus getting 2.5, like this is a team that is annoying to play against. They block a billion shots. They know, you said, if they're going to stay in this game, they're going to grind you down. So that's something that I think a lot of, as you said, new sports bettors don't really look into it because it's, obviously Florida is the better team. Obviously Florida is probably going to win, but the way some of these quote unquote bad teams play, sometimes they'll just grind you in a game. And as Borney said, like middle of the season, there's tons of times where good teams just mail it in. They don't bring their A game, and they and that's why you saw, it's also because the Leafs are cursed and they're still mental midgets from getting blown out by the Habs. But why wouldn't you sprinkle the Habs on that money line the other night? Like, what was it, 350, 375? Like, why would you not take that value, right? Like, it is insane not to.
The very best hockey teams, and I say this in the baseball season too, but the very best NHL team is going to go like 55-25 during the year, the very best. So, they're going to lose games. They're going to, and that's how many teams get 55 wins. It doesn't happen. You're usually at, the high 40s or the 50 game mark. Yeah. So, Jake, you had a pretty deep breath there talking about the Maple Leafs. Are you the representative of Leafs Nation on this podcast right now? Or are you gonna live and die with every game, or are you just gonna roll with the punches here?
No, I don't know if you saw my Twitter the other night, but as one of my classic pop-offs on Twitter, I consider myself the CEO of Depressed Leafs Twitter, which is what I told a lot of my friends back when I was in journalism school.
The chief emotional officer? Is that what that is?
Yeah, exactly. I actually might put that in my bio now. That's a good one. I don't know. Whatever it is with this team, like, obviously the start of the season wasn't great. And then from that kind of point on, they've been really good. And now, I don't know, something's up with Campbell. Mrazek's no good. You see a guy like Freddie down in Carolina who's just thriving, who we ran out of town because of how bad we thought he was, or like maybe it's just not goaltending. Maybe we just don't have the defense. I don't know what the issue is. This team hates.
That's the issue.
They hate getting hit. Anytime a team with a heavy forecheck comes in, they just cower in the corners. It's crazy to me. I don't know. It's not the way games are won. You watched the Columbus game the other night, the Canadiens game. I don't know. I can't keep doing this. I just know what happens when the playoffs comes around. I know exactly what happens, and I'm just going to sit along for this terrible ride.
St. Louis, Calgary, games they lost, and this is this team, and it has been this team for a long time. I saw somebody tweet it. It was summed up perfectly. It's after the Canadiens game. It said, the reason this team won't have success is they have really good players who are really bad in the biggest times. And it comes down to that. They don't like being hit. They don't like the physical gameplay. They'll win any rec hockey game you want to play. Right. They still need to prove that they have the jam to get it done. And I tweeted something about this a few weeks ago, and JD responded to me and says, this is just who they are. But you got to go with the positives. And I'm like, well, positives are great in October, right? But there's a reason this team hasn't got out of the first round since Jeremy Roenick was in the league,
Yeah, I think obviously it's super concerning what's happened to Jack Campbell, but like it's also it's Jack Campbell. Like maybe he just caught lightning in a bottle last season. Like there's a reason why he was a career backup. So like maybe he has fallen back to where he is. But I do agree. Like look at the defensive core right now. Like look at it. Like this is not a good unit. Muzzin goes down. Whenever they experience any sort of injury, they do not have the depth to bring other players up. Like this is obviously a flawed team, but as you said it, they have a lot of skilled players. Their power play was automatic at some points, and you can hide a lot of warts with good goaltending and with scoring. Once the scoring starts to go dry and once the goaltending starts to get a little bit leaky, what else do you have, right? So I think this is a group that it's crazy that I'm the optimistic Leaf fan on this podcast right now. I still obviously know that this isn't a team that is built, but I don't think it's, go scorched earth like Jake said. I think that they can still bring in some depth on defense or go out and get a legitimate number one. Like I like Morgan Riley. Don't get me wrong. He's a fine player. He's an unbelievable offensive player. But he is an absolute liability defensively. Like they don't have that number one guy. Like is Brody your number one guy? He shouldn't be, but he is, right? So
defensively, yeah, for sure.
You don't have that. You don't have a shutdown pairing. You can say that the NHL has changed. It's a different game. Yeah, it is in the regular season, but once playoffs come, it turns into a different sport, and you see it every single year.
Yeah, and it's down in front of the net and in the corners where they get exposed. And when it's not a penalty to give a guy a cross check in the corner, which, we can also argue that. Our friend Ray Ferraro will argue that the penalty should be a penalty at all times. But, yeah, no. And, I mean, was it Dennis Green, right? They are who we thought they were. Like, nobody should be surprised. Nobody should be surprised at this team. But, Jake, I'm sorry I cut you off. You were going to say something.
That's funny. I actually tweeted that the other night as well.
Oh, did you?
Yeah. No, I was just going to say, like, it always seems like this team leads in categories of the league that don't end up mattering in the playoffs. I remember years ago they were the leader in shootout wins. Well, guess what? They don't do shootout in the playoffs. And then this year they're the leader in like they're the best penalty or best power play penalty kill team. Well, guess what? You have to score 5-on-5 to win in the playoffs. And if you can't score 5-on-5, it's going to get messy, especially when you don't have a hard forecheck and you're getting beat in your own defensive zone. I don't know. I get so when these little stretches go, I just get so down, and then they go on a run here, I'll get way back up. It's just there's no like middle ground for me. It's either I'm at the bottom of the barrel or like the top of the kingdom. So
that's why
I think Campbell's a capable goalie. I think Campbell's a capable goalie, right? I think if they play a solid game in front of him, he's good enough there. Like, and he can be great. Mrazek's been really disappointing. Like super, looks like he's never played a net before. Like, there's something seriously wrong with that guy. But yeah, and you said it perfectly a minute ago. When the goaltending's not superb and your second line's not contributing, which they haven't been over the last few games. Then it's going to be really, really hard. You need Pierre Engvall to score for you every night. If this team doesn't have Michael Bunting, where are they? Those words just came out of my mouth. Came out of my mouth. Like we thought, he was going to be, a poor man's Zach Hyman. He's actually been, the best surprise on the team all year. But yeah, I mean, I think it's clearly evident where the holes are. I don't know if they can fix them though. That's the problem that they have. They might be stuck with what they got. Well, I guess only time will tell.
That's why I said at the start of the year, I'm not judging anything. I'm not going to get too high. I'm not going to get too low in the regular season because it doesn't matter what happens. The only way I'm judging this core and I'm judging this team is what they do in the postseason. So get into the postseason, and then that's when I'm going to take my scoring card out and decide what I think about this team. But the writing is on the wall that obviously not enough has happened with this group, has changed, I should say, to make me believe there's going to be success in the postseason. But who knows? Regardless, I don't want to get into this rant because even if they do look phenomenal, even if they do look great, the way that the NHL has the playoffs constructed, they're going to have to play a wagon of a team in the first couple rounds anyways. They're going to run into Tampa or they're going to run into Florida. Like the playoff format in the NHL is so dumb because you do not reward teams for doing well in the regular season. So what is the point at this point?
I don't know what was wrong with the 1 versus 8. That worked great for a lot of years. I don't know, maybe, and some years it's going to be 5 teams from the Metro and 3 from the Atlantic, and so be it. But yeah, I don't know what was wrong with 1 versus 8. I thought that was perfectly fine for that.
Kings won as an 8 seed. Like, I mind you, it was a long time ago, but still, like there's so much parity, and we said it. Like, the difference between a 1 and an 8 in the National Hockey League, there really is not that much once you get into a playoff format where the game has changed. A goaltender can get hot, so it's like you're not creating an advantage either way. I find it. So why not just do it the most fair way? The top 8 teams on each conference, seed them that way, because it really doesn't make sense to me.
It's not fair. I think it was a marketing play. I think they really
100%.
hoped for Toronto, Montreal, Boston, Philly, Pittsburgh, Washington. I think they really hoped that that's what they would get more often out of this structure. I'd have to go back and see, but if we've gotten it or not. But yeah, it's not necessarily. It doesn't reward you, and it's probably due for a review again.
Yeah, and I think a big thing as well too, not just those teams, but I think it was also to try to build up more rivalries in the some of the West, some of the untraditional sports markets, so you can, or hockey markets, I should say, to try to build up those rivalries, because let's face it. Leafs, Habs, Leafs, Boston, like those rivalries are always going to be there. I think it was trying to play up some of the others, but like you said, it's like, how many times have we seen those teams even play in the postseason? So I don't know if it did its job, but I think there needs to be a change.
The only one that they really got, I think, is San Jose Vegas. Like that was a kind of a new one, but I mean, that was Vegas was new to the league. They had to find a rival somewhere. And I still can't believe they hired Pete DeBoer after all that. That's so crazy. Yeah, I know. But we'll talk about this a little bit later in the show. But at least the NHL tries stuff. You got to give them that.
Yeah, no doubt about that.
I complained about the playoff format probably no more than a month ago, and then you look at it in the way that they've done it traditionally, 1 versus 8. We're still playing Tampa in the first round, 6-3 right now. Name one of these teams. I wouldn't want to play any of these teams from the East if I'm the Leafs. This is just the way my brain works. Listen to these teams: Florida, Carolina, Tampa, Pittsburgh, New York Rangers, Washington, Boston. Those are the top 8 teams in the East right now. There's not one team on there that I'm like, oh, I think the Leafs could crush them in the first round. I think you're going to get a tough matchup no matter what. So you're going to have to beat these teams eventually. Time to beat them in the first round.
Fair enough, but at the same time, it's like every team you play in the playoff is going to be good. It does seem cruel, and I'm not even talking about just from the Leafs. Like for example, like for Tampa, like for them to have to, they're a 2-time defending Stanley Cup winning team. They're going to maybe lose out their division, and then all of a sudden their road to the playoffs gets significantly more difficult. I don't know. Just to me, I'm not a fan of it. And yes, I realize 1-8, you're still going to get a tough matchup, but it's a playoffs. You're going to play a tough team at any point. You do make a good point saying that you're going to play a good team. You're going to have to beat those teams eventually, right? So,
yeah, well, I was on the same side as you probably like a month and a half ago. And then when I started diving a little deeper, I'm like, well, I guess I got to beat these guys at some point. So why not make it the first round? I guess. I don't know.
Fair enough.
But yeah, I get it. Road to the playoffs and stuff. It's definitely different.
Fair enough. And Chris, you already mentioned it. I can't believe I didn't even bring it up off the top. We are having an awesome guest here on the Coolbet Canada podcast. Your buddy, Joe Osborne, sports betting analyst at OddsShark, is joining us to chat everything about the sports betting climate here in Canada, talk a little bit about your guys' time together at OddsShark, and of course, everything when it comes to sports betting. We now welcome on Joe Osborne, sports betting analyst at OddsShark. Joe, thanks for coming on. How you doing, buddy?
Guys, I'm doing pretty damn good. How are you?
Can't complain, man. Can't complain at all. Obviously, it's a slow time here for some of us when you come to, no more NFL, but there's still a lot out on the board right now. Just want to get into things before we dive into what's going on in the world of sports. I just kind of want to pick your brain. How exactly did you get involved in the world of sports betting, and how you ended up eventually working with Chris at OddsShark?
Well, I got lucky. That's how I went to school for broadcast journalism, with the goal of being that guy on TSN or Sportsnet or whatever. And so that was a 2-year program that I went through. I ended up getting a job in radio after that, and I didn't like that too much. So I went back to school to kind of supplement my education and did an advanced diploma in public relations. And from out of that, I ended up doing a couple jobs in marketing and communications and public relations. And it was kind of, a bit boring, to be completely fair. And on the side, I was just, as a bit of a hobby, I had a blog, a sports blog, which was mainly focused on fantasy sports and a bunch of UFC stuff and things of that nature. And kind of out of the blue, a recruiter guy who I had met at a Hockey Day in Canada luncheon, of all things, he got in touch with me and he said, "Hey, are you still interested in sports journalism or whatever?" He said, "I think I might have an opportunity here." And I said, "Sure, absolutely." And I thought it was going to be some dinky thing like, the high school football team wants someone to write recaps for them and we'll give you $20 a pop for the newsletter. I thought it was going to be something like that. But I ended up going to this swanky office in Bedford, and they had a sports betting website, and they said, "We want to be the sports bet or the ESPN of sports betting." And I was pretty impressed by that, and they kind of liked the experience that I built up on the side with the blog, and they ended up hiring me to work for Oddshark, and I've been with them since for around six and a half years now.
And Pat, listen, I don't want anyone to get any misgivings about this. Joe did not end up working with me. Joe hired me at Oddshark.
Yeah, I remember we were going through a period of a little bit of hypergrowth. It was funny when I got hired. I thought I was going just like a staff writer type of position. I show up on the first day and they're like, "Yeah, you're going to have 2 guys reporting to you." And I was like, shit, I've never been a manager before. I was like, all right, I played it pretty cool. And it ended up going pretty good. We built out a pretty decent plan, and then we were going through a bit of hyper growth and we need to bring more people in. And Chris is one of the guys who came in for an interview, and he really impressed me. Really, mild-mannered. He could talk sports. He could talk about any sport. So I was pretty impressed by him, and we ended up bringing him on, and it went quite well.
Yeah, Joe, you built yourself.
Thank you for that, by the way, because without that chat we had that afternoon, God knows what I'd be doing now. What was I doing before that? Oh, I was working at Eastlink, broadcasting hockey for peanuts. It was fun, but I was not making any money. So it was, I owe you a lot, actually.
Yeah, and Joe, you built yourself quite the following on Twitter, and you're pretty consistent on a daily basis, kind of putting out your picks. I'm just curious what your what goes into it, like your daily regimen when you are making picks. Are you looking at the board first? Are you going straight to your stats? What do you kind of start with, and how do you come to conclusion of making a certain pick?
Majority of the time, I'm looking at the board the night before, so I'll go through the NHL and the NBA. And it's all stat-based, For NHL, I'm looking at a deep dive into analytics, expected goals for and allowed, high danger chances for and allowed are 2 of the big stats that I do like to look at. And I do consider that above all else. I will also look at a couple trends, home away splits. I do think that's important. Some teams are absolutely fantastic at home compared to the road, and vice versa. Situational betting too, the second game of a back-to-back, how teams perform after a loss. So it's mainly stats, but I will look at some trends and situations and stuff like that. And it's never a situation for me where I'm going with my gut, because I've tried that before and that can get me into a little bit of trouble. So I try to keep the narratives out of it a little bit, and any biases I have in my mind. Like a lot of people, they'll make a bet on the Leafs like I did the other night, and they ended up losing. Who was it? To Columbus, I think it was. Now, for a lot of people, they're saying I'm going to put the Leafs on my do not bet list. I try not to have that mindset when I do bet, but it's mainly stat-based, heavy stats and analytics for sure.
Would you consider betting on Jose Barrios to be stat-based or gut feel?
Barrios, that one. It's hard to. I'm in my son's bedroom right now, so it's hard to do like I used to do on the show. But this is when he was going for the Twins, And he was on an absolute roll. When Chris and I were doing that show together, I think it was the summer of 2019 maybe, this is when the Twins were an absolute cash cow. And you always have a team like this in Major League Baseball. It was the San Francisco Giants this past season. But whenever Barrios was taking the mound, you were getting pretty good value. So you'd always take the Twins on the run line, and you'd end up winning a plus money bet. So, Barrios was that was a narrative-based one, I think. Plus, I like yelling at his name and rolling the R there pretty heavy.
I know I said it's a little bit of a slower time, but I mean, there's still so much going on. How difficult is it for you, that someone who is putting out daily content, to be in tuned to so many different sports, to be giving out daily picks?
Well, I try to stay away from the gimmick bets. And what I mean by the gimmick bets is, I would get myself into trouble because I'd be looking at every single possible bet type on the board. Like NHL, you're looking at the first period over under, the full game, the puck line, the 60-minute line, then a bunch of props. And for the NBA, like the list of props in first quarter and first half, it's just endless. So you can spend so much time doing research where you just kind of get bogged down by the numbers. So I just try to stick to straight bets for the most part. For hockey, it's mainly just money lines. And for NBA, mainly sticking to spreads and totals. And for player props, I like looking at 3-point over-under and point total over-under, because, you only have so much time in the day. And everyone's heard the expression paralysis by analysis. And you can run into that if you're trying to analyze every single thing on the board.
And you mentioned the player prop market. I got into it a little last year, kind of based off what you were doing. And I know you're big on recent form. What kind of sample size are you looking at when it comes to a player prop, say in the NBA? What are you kind of looking for there when you're like trying to make a pick?
I look at a 10-game sample size for both the NHL and NBA. These are long seasons, so it's kind of trying to ride the waves of the season. I find it kind of silly, say, for example, if you're handicapping Major League Baseball for a game in late August and you're incorporating stats from games in April. That doesn't necessarily make a whole lot of sense to me, because we know that players and teams go through extreme highs and extreme lows. And, especially like in a sport like the NBA, different players in and out of the lineups. There's been trades, rotations are changed, coaches are fired and come back. So, like, if you're handicapping the Brooklyn Nets, for example, tonight, are you going to look at their stats for the full season when they had Kevin Durant and James Harden most of those games, when both of those guys won't be playing tonight? So, I like to use a 10-game sample size for most sports. That's what's worked out for me.
We know the betting landscape here in Canada, especially here in Ontario, is changing and will continue to change. We're going to see a lot of more new sports bettors coming into the market. What would be like maybe your 1 or 2 tips for someone who's just starting out sports betting and wants to dip their toes a little?
I would say start small and try to learn from your mistakes. When I first started betting, it was money lines, which was a decent way to do it, but there wasn't a whole lot of research going into it. It was basically, well, this team has a better record than this team, and, I know they're better, so I'm going to bet on them. And that doesn't always work out, right? So try to start small, both with the amounts that you are betting and with the total number of games that you're betting. Maybe there's a hockey game tonight that you're planning to sit down and watch. Well, sit down and go through the stats of that game, see who's playing in net, see who has a disadvantage and advantages in certain areas, and try to just try to learn, try to take away something from each bet won and each bet lost. But like I said, try to learn from your losses. And I know all over sports media right now, there's so much parlay content. And I like to do the occasional parlay too, but you're going to see these big companies splashing out, hey, this guy won a $20,000 parlay and he had 9 teams on the ticket. That's probably one of 5,000 parlays like that are placed at those sports books. But of course, they're advertising that because they want people to be placing those parlays, right? So keep that in mind. It is fun and it is cool to see people hit those lottery tickets from time to time, but they don't hit very often.
I don't know how well Joe follows us, but we've been posting a few of those over the last couple of weeks. So
lottery tickets. Well, they're clicks. Man, they are fun. And if you guys follow me, I don't want to be a total hypocrite. I do the greasy money line parlay and the asshole parlay, of course. And that type of content gets more engagement than basically anything I do. Whenever I post a tweet, like any type of responsible gambling tweet, like, hey, guys, just keep in mind, I'm not a professional sports bettor, so tail at your own risk and blah, blah, blah. I always get negative engagement on that type of stuff. But if I come out and say, hey, here's a 5-leg parlay that I like tonight, people love it. You know what I mean? So people don't like being lectured to. They do like parlays, though.
Joe, I think that's a good time to follow up a bit. And Jake mentioned how big your following is, and whether I've lost track of time in the pandemic, but you were named one of the top follows in the sports betting industry, which is unbelievable. I was so pumped when that happened. How you've done a really good job of staying neutral, just talking sports, and then you mix in the most hilarious shit, and people love it. How have you created that tone? And I know personally that that's not fake, that's you. How have you managed to stay in that lane though, right? Because me personally, I'll get off on political stuff that drives me crazy, that nobody wants to hear it. So how do you make sure you kind of stay in that lane?
Well, I think it was at the height of the Kaepernick stuff with ESPN, where you'd be watching the coverage and you'd be like, oh my God, this is like a total drag. There's 100% some important issues being discussed here, but it kind of clicked with me that, hey, sports is for entertainment, and it's for people to, a getaway for a lot of people. It's something that they don't necessarily want to be stressed out by. So I try to bring substance to that and a little bit of silliness, right? It is entertainment at the end of the day, sports entertainment, right? Not quite at the WWE level, but I try to bring, actionable insights, information people can use and apply to their bets that day. And also just general observations from silly stuff that does not matter throughout the day, right? So I try to bring a little bit of fun to it. There's thousands of people out there covering sports, covering the same game. So I just try to have a little bit more fun with it, I guess.
Two of the things that people seem to gravitate the most, well, there's three that stand out to me. It's the Subway Party sub disdain.
Yes.
It's the crushing a workout wearing a pair of jeans. And I think the most important one is the date on the milk. How did the date on the milk get going, and how many people write you about finding good milk scores every week?
It's funny, I don't know when I picked up on this, probably when I started doing my own grocery shopping, but you go to pick up a carton of milk or a loaf of bread, and I always got into checking the expiration dates on them, because it's funny, what's today, February 24th? You could go to the store right now and you'd have one milk with the February 28th and one with a March 6th. Why wouldn't you take the one that says March 6th, right? If they're the exact same product, the exact same price, but one of them is much fresher. And some people don't look at this, and you're out of your mind if you're not looking at that. So yeah, I started kind of building awareness of this online. And so people will hit me up from time to time. We're getting a little bit of a movement going. People are getting better value at the grocery store. Imagine going into a restaurant and you're picking the item off the menu, and the waiter says, okay, we can give you this. We can give you the one that's been sitting out for a while, or we can give you the one that's just arrived today and is fresh. They cost the exact same thing. Which one are you going to take? You're going to take the freshest product, right? So as you can tell, I feel quite strongly about this.
Oh, that's closing line value on expiry date. Still, it all comes back to sports betting.
Absolutely.
You mentioned a movement, and you are a card-carrying member of Tuanon, being a Miami Dolphins fan. I know Chris has his qualms with Tuanon. So here's a short little, let's call it an elevator pitch on why Tua is the answer in Miami.
Well, he's still very much a project, right? I'm realistic about it, but for some reason, the people of the internet got together and decided that this guy is a complete piece of crap, where, nothing could be further from the truth. Yeah, he still has a lot to work on. He's not perfect. He doesn't have the big arm, but he also hasn't had a whole lot to work with. The worst offensive line in football, this past season. No running game whatsoever. They bring in Duke the Dumpster Johnson, who ends up being his best running back. He was only there for about 4 or 5 games. And his best wide receiver is a rookie, his buddy from Alabama. And then we find out the head coach absolutely hated him. So he's had a whole lot working against him as opposed to for him. But the worst thing about Tua is that he was drafted before Justin Herbert. This isn't his fault. You know, he wouldn't be getting all this blowback if Justin Herbert was just a run-of-the-mill guy. And yeah, if I had the call, could go back 100%, I'm taking Justin Herbert over Tua. I'm not an idiot, but we got to keep in mind here that a lot of these quarterbacks don't break out right away. Josh Allen, who's the toast of the town, he stunk in his first 2 years. He put it together in his third year. And I think Tua, with an offensive-minded head coach coming in, they're going to build the team around him. They have a lot of money to spend in free agency, so hopefully they can build that offensive line up a bit. Now, he's not going to be that big arm quarterback throwing 50-yard bombs down the field, but I do think he is a guy that you can win with, which they have. They have a winning record with him at quarterback. Now, if they give him a little bit more to work with, a running game, I think Miami can be successful with Tua at quarterback. I think people have been unfair to the guy and treating him like a bit of a punching bag. In
fairness, if your owner is trying to lose games and you still end up with a winning record, you can't be all that bad.
Yeah, it's true. So yeah, life as a Miami Dolphins fan is very difficult, guys. I'm always defending something, and then you find out the owner is a bit of a scumbag. And I like the new head coach, man, the guy from San Francisco. I like everything he's had to say. So the one thing that the Miami Dolphins, they always tend to win the offseason, right? So it's another case of that. They're doing very good in the offseason here so far. We'll see how they draft, how they trade, if they can bring any wide receivers, but that's got to translate to at least getting into the playoffs here in 2022.
We've got a Dolphins guy, a Bills guy, and a Pats guy in this group. I don't think I can be the Jets guy. I just don't think I can do it.
And here's the thing. Like, you had a bunch of rookie quarterbacks this season, and most of these guys absolutely stunk. And brutal. None of them have really turned into the punching bags that Tua has, right? Like I just think that the treatment of Tua has been unfair, where, a lot of guys get a pass. Trevor Lawrence gets a pass because of the whole Urban Meyer thing and whatnot. People love Mac Jones for some reason. I think he's okay. I was surprised to see him in the Pro Bowl, but yeah, I'm a big Tua believer here, and hopefully he'll prove me right.
I don't know, Joe. Maybe you missed that breakaway speed he had on that run that they whistled down a little early. So I don't know.
What, in the flag football game that they were playing?
No, I actually wanted to get to the AFC East, and I'm glad we are here. Where do you see the future of kind of this division going with, like you mentioned, so many young quarterbacks, and even the AFC conference itself? I mean, it is stacked full of young talent. Like, where do you see it going? Where do you see it kind of breaking out over the next kind of 5 years here?
I mean, the Bills are putting it all together, right? They had some bad luck in that game versus Kansas City. They should have won that game. That was, and they very well could have gone on to the Super Bowl if that was the case. So I think it's all about the Buffalo Bills. Josh Allen's fantastic. He's reaching his peak athletically. He can run the ball very good. It'll be interesting to see what happens with them losing their offensive coordinator, if they're going to miss any beats there. But yeah, I think it's all about the Bills. I think you're going to see Kansas City rebound here as well after that absolute meltdown in the AFC Championship game. That was shocking to see. And then the other team with the other good young quarterback, the Chargers. Staley, who I gave a hard time to about some of his decision-making. I tend to think he is a little bit overrated, but there's a lot of talent on that team. And if you have that quarterback like one of those guys, you're going to be in the mix. So the AFC is going to be very exciting. It's going to be interesting to see what happens with Deshaun Watson as well, where he ends up.
Well, on that note with the NFL, is there any future market right now that you see some value, whether it's, Super Bowl, conference, even the NFL draft with the first overall pick kind of being up in the air for the first time we've seen in a few years?
I haven't taken a hard look at it yet. And it's because there's going to be a lot of player movement. Like, if you do think Aaron Rodgers is going back to the Packers for some reason, you can't go wrong placing a bet on them because they're being undervalued right now because of the fact that he might be skipping town. Now, that could be a big mistake, too, if he ends up leaving because they're going to be stuck with Jordan Love. But there's a lot of teams you can make a pretty good case for. And one thing that you're going to see coming into this season is a lot of fans of these loser teams, the New York Jets, the Giants, the football team, name a bad team, they're going to be placing these long shot bets on their team because of the fact that the Cincinnati Bengals went on a run. And, it's kind of rare to see a team that was, that bad the previous season going all the way to the Super Bowl. So I think you're going to see a lot of people make that mistake coming into this season.
As a sports book, we encourage people to make those long shots. But yeah. Hang on, I want to ask. I want to ask something. You sound like you were getting ready to move on, but Joe, we talked about how you kind of laser in on the sports that you're focusing on. Is there something that you like to bet on, but maybe it doesn't get a whole lot of play, and like the content isn't there around it? Is there something that you wish you could spend more time promoting or betting on or researching?
Yeah, I wish I had more time to watch UFC fights. Like, I'm a big UFC guy and a big UFC bettor, but I think it's rare that you would hear me get on camera and do a pick for one of the early prelim fights, for example. Like, usually, I'll go on the John Anik podcast for every pay-per-view, and usually my analysis and handicapping is restricted to main events, co-main events, title fights, title eliminator type of fights. But I do wish I had the time to sit down and, go through Fight Pass and watch some of these guys that a lot of people haven't heard of. That would be fantastic because I absolutely love betting on that sport.
Well, I will say back in the day when yourself and Scotty Hastings and Ian McMillan used to make those UFC videos, Ian's moved on now doing good stuff in New York City, but those were really well done. And I think maybe we should take this time to give the guy who put those together a little bit of love. Our guy, Alec Cook over at Oddshark, he's a wizard.
Yeah, he's one of the sharpest guys, man, that I've ever worked with. So I don't work that closely with them anymore. I work mainly with your buddy Steve McLean from Eastlink, of course. He's fantastic too. But yeah, Cookie, an absolute wizard to work with for sure.
Well, that's awesome. I think that's all set for me. How about you guys? Are you good there?
I just have one more, if you don't mind, Joe. I'm just curious what your thoughts are on the future of the broadcasting landscape. You started with the broadcasting, like you said, off the top. Obviously, we've seen some change over the last 5 years. I'd say even the last couple of years with betting becoming a little more incorporated. How do you kind of see the next decade kind of playing out with regulations coming about and such?
I think you're going to see some major shifts. You're seeing these guys like the big guys like Adam Schefter's of the world and Woj and all these guys. They're coming up on their media free agencies. And I think you're going to see companies like FanDuel and DraftKings making bids to bring these guys on and building their own media networks. And I think that's going to lead to the FanDuels and DraftKings of the world getting broadcasting rights for some of these big games. Like we saw Barstool, they had broadcasting rights for one of the bowl games that ended up going up in smoke because of COVID. And from what I believe, there was going to be a lot of betting content on the broadcast for that game. Apparently, they might be in talks with Major League Baseball as well. So I think 5-10 years down the road, you're going to see these broadcasts for some of these games look completely different, complete focus on betting for a lot of the stuff. And that's what's bringing a lot of these viewers in. No one's watching Pirates Reds, in late August, for God's sakes, unless you have a bet on it. No one's watching, what's a hockey game tonight? We got Islanders versus Sharks. Not a whole lot of people interested in tuning in on that unless you have a bet on it like I do tonight. I like the Islanders in that game. So, and people get this, right? That's why people have interest in these games because, they're playing the game within the game. It started as fantasy 15, 20 years ago, and that evolved to betting where you can bet on anything you want, right? So, yeah, I think you're going to see a big betting influence on sports broadcast here in the coming years for sure.
Well, if I look out the window here to my left, I can see Bally's Casino, and of course they took all the big baseball and some hockey, I think, sports broadcasting this year from the Fox Sports Network. So yeah, it's coming. And I know too, like whenever I go to games now, I mean, I'm obviously always betting on them, but you're not in the minority anymore. Like I was at the Leafs game the other night against Pittsburgh, and Matthews scored early, and I had his goal prop, and I'm like, fist pumping. I'm telling the guy, I'm like, oh, that's great for me. I bet on Matthews, and then he comes back at me with what bets he has, and that happens more often than not. Just the guys sitting around you at the stadium. Everyone's betting on the games, like especially young people, 40 and under for sure, have a bet on the game.
Yeah, there was a stigma around it. Even 5 years ago when I started with OddsShark, I remember I was at this Sloan Sports Analytics conference in Boston, and ESPN had a booth set up, and they had a bunch of their interns running it. I don't know exactly what they were doing, but I just happened to get in a conversation with them, and they asked what I did, and I said, well, I work in sports betting, and they looked at me like I was a total scumbag. Like, I will never forget that. Like the disdain, like, oh, really? And I remember that really sticking out to me. Now, if you tune into ESPN, they have their own betting program. They have the lines up on a lot of their shows. So it's good to see, 100%.
They've got a studio here. Isn't that the Link? ESPN has their own betting content studio here on the Strip.
Yeah, they do that show Daily Wager from there on the last, and that's only going to continue to grow, right? So.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I know, as I was telling you before the broadcast, I do some broadcasting for the National Lacrosse League, and already in our shows, in our broadcast, we've incorporated, betting lines, money lines, over unders. So I think a lot of the smaller sports are definitely realizing this is a way to gain new fans, because like you said, who's tuning in to the Thunderbirds against the Rock if you're not a lacrosse fan? But if you can sprinkle a little bit of money on it, certainly It's going to bring in more eyes. I know Chris is now a big lacrosse guy because he can bet on it.
Man, Joe, when you get a chance, go to a Thunderbirds game, put some money down. It is electric, man. There's 20 odd goals in the game. It goes back and forth. The swings are unbelievable. Yeah, it's really fun. I was going to say, we can't let you go without talking about baseball, though. And you brought up the Pirates and the Reds and made me think about Luis Castillo first 5 bets. Obviously, we're all hoping baseball gets underway here pretty soon. Is there anything that you want to keep an eye on for the Major League Baseball season if and when we get there?
Well, I like the Blue Jays, of course, and I'd like to see I think they have one more big move to make, whether it be adding someone to the starting rotation, or they were rumored for Freddie Freeman, which would be an absolute haul. But the one thing I would love to see Major League Baseball do is expand the playoffs, right? Like, I think they have to evolve to do that, because it keeps more fan bases more interested later into the season, right? It gives people more to root for. If you are that Reds fan, or probably not the Pirates, but even a team like the Blue Jays who plays in that difficult division, if the Blue Jays are in a playoff race going into September, that makes things much more interesting as a Blue Jays fan, doesn't it? So, but baseball is a sport that refuses to evolve. They still cater to the aging fan base, and they still cater to their record books, which are an absolute disgrace because of what we saw with PED use and everything. But I don't think it will happen that they'll make favorable changes. Why cater to the fans, right, guys? But yeah, it's still a sport I love, and I would like to see them make some more fan-friendly changes, like the NHL. They'll make changes in the middle of the season. Like, how many times do they flip-flop on the overtime rule? And they finally got there with the overtime that they do now, which I think is the best overtime in all of sports for the regular season, right? But they cater to the aging fan base, and they talk about making changes, but they don't make any.
Yeah, Rob Manfred is, I don't know who's pulling his strings. It has to be somebody, because if not, it's just the most head-scratching performance of a commissioner of all time. Like, people like to boo Gary Bettman, but Gary Bettman, he's been good for the owners. He's done his job. He's also helped advance the game. Like, if you look at where the game was when Gary Bettman started to where it is now globally, and just eyes on it and technologically and all that, I mean, it's come a million miles. It feels like baseball's going backwards somehow, and it's frustrating, because, as you guys know, I love baseball, and I really enjoy going to Jays games, but I love the sport, and it's really frustrating when you see it just continually, Plaxico burst in the nightclub itself over and over again.
Yeah, I mean it's kind of funny, like NHL, like there's a lot of parity in the NHL, right? Like, and if you look at a team like the Florida Panthers, arguably the best team in the NHL here this season, you go back to a couple seasons ago, they absolutely stunk. You look at the NBA this season, which has more parity than ever. When was the last time? Like, how often could you say? Remember 4 years in a row is Warriors versus Cavaliers in the finals. You could kind of set your calendar to it. But now, 5 or 6 different teams have a chance at winning the Super Bowl. Look at this year, or the NBA Finals. Look at this year's Super Bowl. The Cincinnati Bengals get in. You don't see too many stories like that in baseball. Sure, the Tampa Bay Rays, but going into the season, if you're an Orioles fan, if you're a Pirates fan, I keep bringing up that team, that you got no shot because the Yankees and the Dodgers are spending $200 million more for their roster that season. So it really doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but they refuse to change it.
I guess this might be a good place to end. You brought up the Tampa Bay Rays. Can I just get your synopsis on their home stadium?
Yeah, so I'm a proponent for baseball moving back to Montreal. I don't think that they got a whole lot of help from the league and the commissioner at that time. They kind of bailed on them a little bit, and it was because of their stadium. The Big O is an absolute dump. Yet you have a winning team down in Tampa Bay. And first of all, the fans don't really support them during the regular season, and you can't really blame them. Going to that dome, which is an absolute dump. I've seen better turf on sunburnt mini golf courses than they have on the field there at the Trop down in Tampa Bay, right? So, yeah, that's something Chris and I used to make fun of quite a bit back in the day, and I'll still make fun of it. The Tampa, not a team that I enjoy watching. Credit to them. They don't have a whole lot of money to spend, and they're making these runs into got to the World Series 2 years ago. It went not, but yeah, an absolute dump down there, the Trop in Tampa Bay.
That was my favorite gag. We would just to get Joe riled up, we just put a big picture of the Trop, just a panoramic shot of the field on the screen. Oh man!
Well, they're building. It makes no sense. They're building like these fantastic state-of-the-art ballparks and stadiums all over the place. Then you have this winning team down in Tampa Bay that the fans don't want to support because it's an absolute dump of a ballpark that they play in, right? So it doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Yeah, you're down in Tampa Bay.
If you don't mind, Joe.
Sorry. What's that?
I just have one more thing, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
You gave me an idea a couple answers ago when you're talking about the overtime in hockey. What is going to fix the NFL postseason overtime? I know we had so many people chime in about it. I just want to get your thoughts on that whole situation with what happened with the Bills and Chiefs.
Put 10 minutes on the clock. Simple as that. Put 10 minutes on the clock. Then it doesn't come down to the coin toss. Now, I'll say people who are proponent of the coin toss say, well, win in regulation. Yeah, it still does come down to the luck of a coin toss. So if you put 10 minutes on the clock, usually if there is the coin toss, they're going to play 4 or 5 minutes anyways, unless the team scores a touchdown right off the bat. So put 10 minutes on the clock, give each team 2 timeouts, and then it's nice and even that way, and it's nice and simple too. You don't have to do some fancy college football rule. 10 minutes on the clock, just similar idea to hockey does sudden death, but yeah, just 10 minutes on the clock, super simple. Perfect. And you know what I would do for? Do you know what I would do for baseball extra innings in the regular season? So they do the thing now where they put the man on second base, which isn't bad, right? Because no one, and I'll bring up these teams again, no one's watching the 15th inning of Pirates Reds in late August, right? Like on a Tuesday night, unless you're unemployed, right? But in the regular season, allow teams in extra innings to reset the batting order. So you can put your best 3 players up, kind of like the idea of a shootout. You can put whoever you want into that shootout in hockey. Reset it so you can reset your batting order so you're going to see the best players. And that's a good way to showcase the talent, right? Which is also something Major League Baseball is horrible at. So that's what I would do to add a little bit of excitement. How cool would it be seeing these guys hit that, the big names hit the walk-off home runs as opposed to 7, 8, 9 coming up in the 10th inning.
I like that. I like that a lot. Joe for commissioner. Let's get Manfrod out of there and
let's go.
Get you in there. Let's do it. Joe, honestly though, thank you so much for popping on. This is great. We'll have to have you back on. Hopefully when baseball's going on, fingers crossed, we need that because as you know, the dog days of summer can be bad in the midst of the season. I don't know what I'll do if there's no baseball this summer.
Yeah, guys, I'd love to come back. Thanks for having me on. Good luck to you guys, and good luck to all the listeners out there.
That was Joe Osborne of Odd Shark. We want to thank him for joining us here on the Coolbet Canada podcast. Again, we want to also let you know you can subscribe, whether you're watching on YouTube, hit the subscribe button. Every time there's a podcast dropped or any of our video content, you'll get a little notification in your inbox. Or if you want to listen to the podcast, maybe you're driving, maybe you're going for a run, or maybe you're just sitting away working, listen to the podcast, whether it's on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or SoundCloud, you can subscribe to us there. And of course, as well, you can follow us on all social media platforms at Coolbet Canada. You'll see lots of great content being posted up there. So, gentlemen, we are posting this episode on a Thursday evening. So once again, our weekend wagers is a little bit of a longer weekend wager, but nonetheless, I think we all have picks, whether it's Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. It's, they call, what is it? Thursday Junior. That's our Friday Junior now. I think that's what they're calling it. Friday Junior is Thursday. So it's basically the weekend. So any picks here, Jake, we'll start with you. I think you're going to the hard court for your pick because basketball, it seems like their all-star break has been like super long, but it's back.
Yeah, back to the association for a pick. I think I had Team LeBron. They didn't end up covering last week, unfortunately. But we're going to go to the real basketball now. Off the all-star break, a lot of fresh rosters. Tonight they get back going. So tomorrow I'm looking, which would be Friday, I'm looking at Raptors Hornets. Raptors should be fresh. When Gary Trent Jr. is in the lineup, this team is solid defensively and offensively. You should have Fred VanVleet, Siakam. It should be the regular five as far as I know. I haven't looked too deep into it, but I'm going to ride the Raptors. They're 1.5 on the spread right now, minus 123 money line. I'd probably just play the money line. It's a little more juice, but then you don't run into any issues with a last-second winner. Basketball can be pretty crazy. So I'm going to take Raptors money line for Friday night against the Hornets. Last time they were in Charlotte, they took care of business pretty handily. I had a friend on the sideline, so I remember the game pretty well. So, yeah, we'll take the Raptors to go on a little run here in the second half and hopefully make the playoffs without that little silly play-in they've got in the NBA.
Yeah, that play-in is super annoying. But, I mean, again,
we were talking about playoff structures earlier. You guys don't think the NBA would translate well if we had an NHL play-in like they did in the bubble?
Again, my thoughts on that is skewed because the Leafs lost to Columbus in their trial, but it made for some really entertaining hockey. And again, maybe I'm just of the thought that teams should be, rewarded for the success that they have in the playoffs. But I guess if you're on that bubble, if you're on the fringe, why not? Like, it was really electric hockey. So I don't know. Maybe you've changed my mind. Maybe I am okay with that. Obviously, you kind of think that could work in the National Hockey League.
I don't know. I also don't think your season should come down to a best 2 out of 3. It's the same reason I don't love the first round in baseball being short or the wild card game being one game. Like it's tough. Like you play the season to get your standing. So I think that should be enough, Get your 8th place. You got 82 games to do it, Yeah.
Yeah. And I think everyone people probably make the argument that like, oh, well, what if a team's had a handful of injuries and stuff? Well, everyone goes through injuries. You know what I mean? Like they can hit you at any time. If you manage to find your way into a 7-8, I don't think you should kind of suffer with having to play this play-in. I mean, I don't know. It worked out for them last year because I think the Grizzlies ended up coming out of like the 9th or 10th seed. But for the most part, the teams that were supposed to make it did ended up making it. So I don't know. You're adding that much more pressure. I don't love it.
It's catch-22. It keeps teams maybe a little bit more from tanking when they're out of the playoff picture. But yeah, I don't think rewarding bad teams is also what we want to do. So let's make the regular season great again.
I love that. Although I will say, I think when it's When it's not your team and you're watching like even the play-in game for the MLB, like the one, if it's a tie-break game to get into that wild card game, it's electric. But if it's your team, like that's the last thing you want. But if all you've got is a little bit of money on the line, it makes for unbelievable television. I could not imagine that being your team that you're cheering for. So, that's enough. That's enough playoff structure for today. But Chris, I know you have a rule for every time that you go to a game that you sprinkle a little bit on the over. Are you going to be doing that? And is there any other bets that you'll be placing when you're watching that game?
The rule is supposed to be bet on the home team and bet for goals, right? I may or may not be getting my tickets through the Colorado Avalanche, so I'm going to have to bet on the Colorado Avalanche. Early line has them at minus 125. I think that's a really fair price. The visiting teams won the 2 games these teams have played this year, including 2 weeks ago. The Avs were in here in Vegas, 2-0 win. So I'll be betting for the Avalanche, laying a wager on the money line. I'll cheer for the over, and maybe I'll mix in a Naz goal prop. The night the 3 of us went to the Leafs game and Naz hit that goal prop, that was as cool as it got.
Absolutely. Yeah, that was electric. It was, that the props were falling for us quite easily that night. So try to grab those positive vibes from that night and roll into Vegas. And that'd be a tough look if you had Vegas and you're sitting with all the family and friends of the Avs and you're standing up cheering and they're, what are you doing?
But make no mistake, if it's 5-1 Vegas late and that 7th goal goes in and it's Jack Eichel, I'm going to be cheering and I'm going to be high-fiving.
Exactly. That's awesome. I'm going to stay on brand. National Lacrosse League, big lacrosse guy. Everyone knows it. And my picks, surprisingly, have been pretty solid. So
I don't think that's a surprise. You know the league better than anybody.
100%.
Well, I'm an absolute mush. So I'm going to go here, and this is where I think I'm kind of thinking the same way that the book is right now, because once again, the Saskatchewan Rush are a favorite, and things are not going well in the Prairies right now. They're a team that has consistently been a championship contender. They came into this year basically with this group saying this is the last time this group is going to be together. They've got a lot of unrestricted free agents that contracts are expiring. So it's going to go either way. They're either going to lose and they're probably going to sell the farm and start building from the ground up. Or if they win, which I think they're going to, this is something that could catapult their season and they can get in the playoffs. And we talk about playoff format. Well, in the National Lacrosse League, the first game of the playoffs is a 1-game series. You don't get into the 3-game series until you get to the conference and then the finals. So for me, they're a team that the books still believe they're a good team, and for good reason. You look at this team on paper, it's just not working for them. So I'm taking the Rush on the money line at minus 122 against Colorado, a team that beat them in Colorado last week. It was a very close game. I think Saskatchewan's the hungrier team. Hungry dogs run faster. Give me the Rush on the money line.
Which game are you calling this weekend?
This one as well. So
Wow.
I'll be doing the game, the TSN game of the week. Usually it's just the East games, but a little bit of a mix up here with the crew. So I'm heading out to Saskatchewan. And if we have any cool bettors out in Saskatchewan, I'm sure you're already a Rush fan. But we talked about how electric the atmosphere is in Hamilton with the Rock, Halifax with the Thunderbirds. Boy, SaskTel Center, especially with COVID restrictions starting to ease up in the Prairies. Saskatoon, man, that is an awesome place to go watch a lacrosse game. I went there a couple of years ago for the finals. Probably not going to be as raucous as it was then, but those guys like to party. They like to cheer on the green and the black, and the atmosphere that they have in that building is wicked. So
I'll tell you what else they've got in that building that's wicked. There is one concession stand that sells nacho tater tots. It's tater tots, but with nacho toppings. Make sure you get them while you're there. Make sure you get them. They are amazing. We had them at the Olympic trials. Unreal.
Okay, I was going to ask you any insights because I know you and Huss were there not too long ago. Okay, so I will leave the press box sometime, maybe during warmups. Go down, get those nachos because that sounds incredible. I love nachos. Big nachos guy, big tots guy. I think tots are the most underrated form of potato going. So I'm all in. I'm all in. I'll report next week because that sounds so good.
They are so good. Obviously, when you're done the broadcast, get yourself an original 16. And was it the Shark Club? Is that where I was hanging out there? Anyway, real cool guys there on the bar. Me and Hustler did some damage there with the per diems. Yeah.
Love that. Love that. Alrighty,
And
guys.
boys, with
go ahead.
all of us having kind of a singular pick here, I don't know, we haven't done this yet, but what about the thoughts on a Coolbet Canada Podcast boosted odds parlay? Maybe Rush Raptors and Avalanche, or maybe Rush Raptors in the over?
No, it's a given. Rush. Did you take the Raps spread or money line?
I just said money line. So Raps to win,
Okay.
Rush to win, which we already have the numbers on, and then I don't know if you can find us an early number for the Avs or even the over. I don't know.
Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah. Well, done. Consider it done. We'll get it done.
There you go. Look at that. So keep your eyes out for that. You can find that on the side tab where you'll see boosted odd parlays. You'll see that there, but also we'll be sure to put it out on our socials as well. So look at that, guys. Look at us just making parlays on the fly here on the Coolbet Canada
Hey, if
Podcast.
everyone else gets a boosted odds parlay, why can't we?
Exactly. Again, yes, the boosted odd parlays. You'll see those there. Are you guys still doing your boosted partner parlays, even though the football season's done, Chris? With the
lock shop. Yeah, we did one last week. I don't remember what it was, or maybe we did.
It was a winner. You had Kopitar Point, I believe.
Yeah, that's what it was. Yeah,
winner.
my contribution was the Anze Kopitar Point. Yeah, that's right. And the boys had like Caroline. Yeah. So we're doing it. We're recording that on Friday, so that'll be up as well.
Perfect. Yes. So tune in to the Lock Shop on Friday. That will be on Dustin Nielsen's Twitter feed, but you can also listen in to it on the podcast after on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And while you're there, if you're listening to us, make sure you are listening and being a subscriber, and also give us a 5-star review because that certainly helps up pop in our feed. So fellas, before we get going, any final words we can leave the cool bettors before we roll into the weekend?
Stop betting 5 to 9 leg parlays.
Unless you're using
we will not promote them.
Unless you're using the bet builder, maybe we'll. No, I'm just kidding.
No, I got nothing. College basketball is ramping up. I'm excited. March Madness is upon us. I cannot wait. So that's kind of where I've been putting my money lately.
Yeah, Arkansas is heating up, man.
If anybody knows how to discreetly steal a massive chair and get it back to Toronto, all tips are accepted. I don't know how I can sneak this one. I put a fake mustache on it and walk it through the airport or something, but I don't know. I got to get this chair back to Toronto.
Yeah, it looks so comfortable. I thought you might have been dozing off at some point because how comfortable it looks. Well, that's all the time we do have for today, guys. I want to thank you for tuning in. He's Jake Bowen-Moss. He's Chris Abbott. I'm Pat Gregoire. And as we always say, stay cool.